Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. I think your conversation is going to last a little longer. The film that I chose is rather simple, very meager in its style, very meager in its dialogue, and it's a very loose film. So I think it'll be a quick, easy talk, but I think an important one nonetheless. The Puffy Chair is the first film by the Duplass brothers, Jay and Mark. Jay was behind the camera on this one, and Mark helped with the writing as well as starred. And it's this IMDb logline reads as Josh Sagers, Mark Duplass, drives across country on a mission to deliver his father's birthday gift, a giant purple lazy boy. Pretty simple?
Yeah, for sure. It's just like, here's an excuse to go on a road trip, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And it kind of really frames a way to talk about the issues. This film premiered at the 2005 Sundance Film Festival, and I believe was bought by Netflix, is what it said on, I purchased it off of iTunes, and it said it was a Netflix purchase. So this film actually took the Duplass brothers in to make several films. They have since made a gorecore film, is what it's labeled, Baghead, Cyrus, starring John C. Reilly, Marissa Tomei, and Jonah Hill, and Jeff Who Lives at Home, which we talked about with Ed Helms and Jason Segel. So we're pretty familiar with their work. So they were known to start the mumblecore movement with other filmmakers such as Joe Swanberg and frequent Duplass collaborator Lynn Shelton. Mark Duplass starred in her film Your Sister's Sister.
So what is mumblecore? Okay,
so it kind of abides by a set of rules. So it focuses on a naturalistic approach to filmmaking. And so what I mean by that is the aesthetic and dialogue. Everything is natural. So you saw the film. It had a very like home movie kind of look, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and it kind of like applies to a set of guidelines. I don't want to say that they're rules, but like the improvised dialogue. And also, they don't use any ADR. They keep the budget low, and they are able to get full creative control. And now there wasn't any creative control to be had with this film because there was no studio backing before, because they just made this film independently, I believe, from a loan from their father, is what I heard on some interview that Mark Duplass did a couple years ago. And they're able to operate completely outside the studio system, which they pretty much still do. It kind of has the same code and checklist of Dogma 95, which is Lars von Trier from the Netherlands and Thomas Vinterberg. So they would do like a complete naturalistic approach. And I don't have a list of the rules that they have, but it's kind of the same. Like there's no, they have mics, but it's no sound effects, no Foleying, no fancy camera movement. It's all very natural, lots of close-ups, lots of improvised dialogue, which I know that you've already commented on a little bit, and it kind of gives like a hangout feel to a movie. So it's not necessarily a novel concept. This has been used before with filmmakers like Woody Allen and Jim Jarmusch on Manhattan and Stranger Than Paradise, respectively, and even to a certain extent with Richard Linklater's Before series. They kind of do a walk and talk kind of free-flowing dialogue sort of thing. So to set that up, this movie is definitely the first of those type of films from the Duplass brothers. So
it's pretty much their first movie. It is their first feature-length movie, right?
Yeah. That's what I said a second ago. Yeah, it is their first feature-length film, and it actually got them the career they have today.
So this movie is about two brothers, and then there's a girlfriend as well, and they go on this road trip to get the Puffy Chair. This I guess their dad had a chair when they were younger, right? And this was a Puffy Chair.
Right. Yeah, they go to get it off of Craigslist, and the opening scene really sets it up. What did you think about the way that the film started?
How did it start? Refresh me.
Okay, so it was the opening dinner scene. He's Duplass sitting across from Kate Aselton, who's actually his wife, which is kind of funny. But he says, I'm just so happy that you're here, and I want you to stay the night. And he gets a phone call. And so he gets on his phone and he's talking, and he's being very candid with some guy I think he's trying to do business with. He's a musician, like concert promoter, and he's trying to book this band, and they go with another promoter, and she's just sitting there the whole time, and there's like tension brewing.
Right. She wants the attention from him, and
he says ridiculous things like, I didn't date that girl. And how big is his penis size?
Yeah, he's doing some total Jim Locker talk right in front of his, like, across the dinner table.
Yeah, it was clearly a plan that they had made. And I think the scene says a lot about their relationship in general. He just doesn't get it. It's not that he's a jerk, or it's not that he's completely apathetic to what she feels. He just is kind of a clueless guy. He's just lost in the world.
I guess both of the brothers are, really.
Yeah, absolutely. His brother is like a hippy-dippy kind of guy.
Right.
And, they kind of have a kind of a funky relationship where they juxtapose his relationship with his brothers, who he meets a girl in a movie theater, a woman in a movie theater. And,
as they're on their road trip, they have a whole day to kill because they're waiting on the Puffy Chair to be reupholstered.
Yeah.
And the brother, the eccentric brother, he meets a girl in a movie theater, and they just eye each other, and then that cuts to a whole nother scene I think you want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. And I don't know, man. I just think that it's really neat how they're able to build up the myth about the chair without really telling you too much. You don't really know what type of significance the chair had in their life. Like, I assume it's one that their dad watched ball games in or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but there's this whole kind of legend behind it in a way, and like you see the chair originally, and it's disheveled and messed up, and the reupholstering could be like a metaphor for their new relationships, forging new relationships and rebuilding and whatnot. And I really think that's probably what they're going for. Nothing too extravagant. It's not a very ambitious movie. So that's kind of, I guess I'll kind of touch base on some notes, and then if you want, let's break down some scenes.
Yeah. So I think this is a good movie for a first movie. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. But man, I don't know how it... Well, I understand why this movie now is on a lot of the streaming sites. For instance, I watched it on Hulu, and we're actually going to put a link to it on Hulu and on our website, filmgeddon.com. So if you want to watch it there, sign up through our Hulu link. Helps out a little bit. Because the Duplass brothers, they're famous now. I enjoyed Cyrus, and I also enjoyed Jeff Who Lives at Home. I definitely recommend this movie for people who are fans of the Duplass brothers. But I really don't recommend it for anybody else besides that, because you're not going to get, with one exception, you're really not going to get much out of this, I don't think. It's really just kind of a study, I think, for people who love film and who want to just kind of harken back to these guys when they got started. Let's talk about the production.
Okay.
And you just kind of, when you were describing mumblecore earlier, the idea is you don't put a lot of money into this, and I get it, particularly for people starting out. That makes a lot of sense to me, right? Mm-hmm. This movie was filmed probably in 2004, and that was right before things got really good with being able to make indie movies and amateur movies. Like for instance, right now, dude, our phones will record 1080p.
Absolutely.
We can get the video, right?
Yeah.
Audio, I'm not as sure about that, but I imagine that's not as tricky these days either. I think this movie does look and sound really good, considering this was filmed right before the big technology boom. I thought they did really well with it, but you can obviously tell this is antiquated equipment, and they did it on the cheap. Whereas if you were to record an indie movie now in 2015, you honestly, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, you have Robert Rodriguez who's doing, in particular, all this awesome special effects work on the cheap. To me, it's ironic that it was right before the big technology boom, and you can tell, but because of the technology boom, and now because of all of the accessibility with streaming, you still get to see this movie. Right. Yeah, you do get to see this movie, and it's awesome to be able to look back and see where things were, because in that time, it was like a sweet spot. It was before there was a really another big of independent film after the 90s. We talked about last week, I think we talked about, Paul Thomas Anderson and those guys, the video store generation. And this is more so, I don't want to say like a YouTube generation, because they kind of came a tad before that. Sure. But they definitely didn't get lucky, because I do think they are talented and I do think they have things to say, but they were lucky to be in that time and to be making film at that time. And I don't want to say it's easier. It was easier to get in because, hell, they got into Sundance and
with that going on now, you know how difficult it is and how many people they reject. So there is a quality to the film.
Well, there is, but man, I don't praise it that high. I'm honestly, and I don't know anything about what kind of movies do not get in, but man, I'm really shocked this movie got in. If I was like a film professor at college and one of my students brought this to me, I would be like, you know what? This is really, really good. You need to keep working, and I think you will be great. This is not it, though. But this is really, really good. You got so much right, you know? To me, it's just the characters, while they were eccentric, they weren't clearly defined in their eccentricities. You just kind of had to believe that, you know, they were eccentric. But there wasn't a lot of detail into how that was. There are some really good scenes, though. I did laugh a few times. I just never really felt attached to any of the characters, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I didn't really either. And I really wanted to gravitate toward Mark Duplass's character, Josh, who is the main character. And I wanted to like him, but he would do very absurd things. For example, trying to skimp out on spending an extra $10. Very strange.
Yeah.
Didn't really show a reason for that. I mean, I get it. It was an intriguing scene. I enjoyed it, but didn't really make sense plot-wise other than to have a funny little set piece.
And I did enjoy that. I did enjoy that little comedic piece. There, you know, they're trying to sneak 3 people into a one-man motel room to save $10, and that was somewhat enjoyable. I did enjoy that.
Yeah, there are little interludes like that really work well. Also, the car honking scene. They're trying to get into the mechanic's shop or the upholstery shop, and he just kind of loses all touch with his frustration with his girlfriend, his frustration with his brother's decisions, and he just really just wants the damn chair. And you get that, but it doesn't really form a fully realized thought in any way. Other than those interludes, the movie just kind of falls flat. This was the first time I'd seen the movie as well.
Sure.
So this was just kind of a blind buy, I suppose.
Well, so let's talk Dazed and Confused real quick.
Okay.
Richard Linklater. Linklater, how do you say it?
Linklater, I suppose.
Great movie. A lot of great scenes. I'm a fan of Adam Goldberg in particular. Yeah. So a lot of people don't give Adam Goldberg a lot of credit, but man, I love it every time he's in a movie.
Yeah.
But one thing that pulls me out of that movie every time, I can't watch this movie anymore because someone actually pointed it out, and I realized it had been bugging me for years. The main character, what's his name?
Wiley Wiggins, the star, or
the long-haired kid.
Yeah.
He has a go-to.
Mitch Kramer.
Is that him? Mitch Kramer.
Yep.
Okay, so he's got a go-to in that movie where he like pinches his nose and like looks down in frustration. He's like, oh, and dude, he does it like 6 or 7 times in that movie, and it basically what that is I'm not a good actor, and this is my go-to little expression, and it just reeks of amateur hour to me in what is otherwise a great movie with a lot of great actors. And this movie did that to me with the word dude and man.
Okay.
They say the word dude. The Puffy Chair, they call each other dude. I'm not exaggerating. It has to be well over 100 times. They say the word man to each other. Hey, dude. Hey, man. I mean, in the same sentence, they'll say dude twice. One of the big scenes, the main character is talking to his girlfriend, and they're having a big conversation. This is like, do we see ourselves getting married? And he literally says, dude, you want me to be the dude? I'm not the dude that you want me to be, dude. He calls his girlfriend dude, number one, which no one does.
Right.
And then he uses dude 5 words after that. And I couldn't help it, man. I just bust out laughing out loud. I was like, if I hear dude one more time, and once I realized it totally pulled me out of this movie, and I could not really fully enjoy it after that. You don't call your girlfriend dude ever. It's just every other word was dude. And I guess this goes back to the whole mumblecore idea, right? We're improvising a lot of these, and they were just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, the whole subgenre is kind of implodes on itself. I mean, it's a walking, talking, fault. Like, there's a lot of fault to everything in the movie, and that's kind of what the whole movie is going for. I think it is going for this clumsy look, and either you buy it or you don't. And their films absolutely have gotten better over time.
1,000%. I think Cyrus.
1,000%. I
think Cyrus and Jeff Who Lives at Home are fantastic movies.
Oh yeah, I I actually watched their second film, Baghead, after I saw this one.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it in a DVD shop, and I just picked it up for like $5 or something like that. And earlier I referenced Gorecore before I introed Mumblecore, and that was what this was called. I think that's kind of redactive and ridiculous to keep naming these movies, Mumblecore. Like, who's to say, that they probably didn't intend for that. Some journalists just came up with that. And
Sure.
So it's called, I'm putting air quotes, Gorecore. And it is like this horror comedy mashup. And that movie's not as successful as this one either. It has a very shaggy feel to it. But that's just what they were going for, and that was really conducive to the time period they were working with, and the equipment and the budgets that they were working with. So
Yep.
I guess I don't want to say give them a pass for it, because you certainly can't, because it is distracting. I think I've grown a little more accustomed to actually enjoying a more loose fitting film, a looser feel of a film, and the camera not really working and not being as pristine as like a Michael Bay movie. They're complete, it's apples and oranges. You can't even compare the two. It doesn't even make sense to. But I think if I would have saw this movie 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have taken to it as much. So it really kind of just depends on where you are in life, because the characters are in their late 20s, and that's somewhat around the demographic that what we are accustomed to and what we know, and how we relate and whatnot. So in that sense, it does pose a lot of relatable problems, but you don't really ever get a sense for what they're going for specifically, other than a small little character piece, which I typically like, that doesn't have fully fledged characters, and that overall hurts the movie.
Sure. And I've got no problem with everything you just described as well, as long as the movie has something to say. And I just don't feel like this movie had too much to say.
No,
you know. So one thing I did like about this movie, the actors cried real tears.
Yeah.
So that sounds silly, but that's one of my pet peeves. You can have, and everybody watch this next summer. We'll start talking about summer movies here the next few episodes. You can have a movie that costs $200 million. Watch the crying scene. No tears. You would be surprised at how often that happens, and it gets me. But these people had real tears, probably because that's the one thing production-wise they could afford.
Yeah.
Maybe they heard how many times they said dude, and they just cried. When I was about halfway through this movie, I told myself, I'm going to say on the podcast that I will not recommend this movie to anybody who's not a movie fan or does not want to just kind of look back at the Duplass brothers. And then the very end happened, and I'm going to change that. There's a scene towards the end, and he's talking to his dad, and he asks his dad, she, referring to the girlfriend, wants commitment from me. And my mind is going 1,000 different directions. In many ways I'm ready, and in many ways I'm not. What do I do? This is a standard question, right? Everybody wonders this. And you think that, like, a father figure would have an answer for that, and just a definite answer. But often they don't. But I thought his answer was perfect. And I thought that this is what the movie had to say. I'm kind of paraphrasing. But what his dad said was, you already know everything you need to know about this relationship. At this point, you're waiting for something either really good or really bad to happen. And that's never going to happen. So you need to make a decision. And I thought about that. Dude, how many times have you done that? We all do that.
Yeah.
Really, you're waiting for like some giant sign that this is the right move, or it's not. But when do we ever get that in life? We never do.
Right. I think you really hit it on the head. And that kind of even calls back to the first scene. He was being reactive to every situation. He was reacting to him not getting that specific gig. And, and his dad's telling him he needs to be proactive about his relationships. And he kind of does that at the end of the movie. And the movie does have a conclusion. And it kind of leaves a few things up in the air, but it does have a conclusion that I believe is somewhat satisfying when you look at it from that perspective.
Sure.
Now, if you're looking for a big climax, you're not going to get it, and you're not going to like it. So the whole point with his character, and I think he communicates this well, what kind of person he is, if he is a good guy or a bad guy or, a white knight, black knight, whatever, he does end up being proactive about whatever he is intending to do by the end of the film.
Sure. Yep.
He is, and that was the whole point. He was finally going to be proactive about getting that chair to his father. And rather than waiting for something else, to happen. He was going to go no matter what. It just so happened that, these two quirky characters, that being his brother and his girlfriend, came along for the ride. And it's a road trip movie, and it's nothing too, it's nothing too special, but it's definitely one for any film fan that is at least remotely familiar with the work that these guys have been doing for, it's crazy, a decade now.